Hello everyone and welcome to a GiantSlayerTV deck tech. My name is Boulevard and today I want to talk about Iceborne Poros, an extremely unique deck within Legends of Runeterra. If you're just getting started on a fresh account, maybe you're playing on a new shard, maybe you're just starting your Runeterra journey for the first time, Iceborne Poros is the perfect starter deck for you as it is contained entirely of just commons and rares. You get to save those epic and champion wildcards for later down the line when you want to build a more permanent deck. Now you might be thinking, okay, so this is a starter deck? No, this is a competitively viable deck. When Iceborne Legacy got buffed in patch 3.0 earlier this year, there was a visceral reaction from the community. Oh, this is the most broken thing we've ever seen. Don't worry, everyone. There's going to be a hot fix on Iceborne Legacy just for less than 24 hours later for everybody to do a complete 180 and turn their back on this deck. Say it's a fluke, it's a cheese deck, just for it to go on and win 3 tournaments in the first 4 weeks of the format. This deck is doing it all. It is a great deck for both casual and competitive players looking to enter your first tournament or hit Masters for the first time. Whatever goal you have, championless Poros can get you there. Now, if you do have things on your account, cosmetics and such, it's important that you try to line up all your Poros. You can use the Anniversary Poro, there's the Moonstruck Poro, Base Poro even. I like the Rainbow Poro. There's a couple of Poro card back options available. I'm using the World Championship 21 one, and there's not enough Poro emotes to fill out a full wheel. You are going to have to double up on some of them. I recommend Braum or Sad Poro personally. I like the Pride Poro as well. Just don't double up on number 1 fan. But let's take a look at the actual deck. Now, at a base level, the same general game plan that you want to be enacting every game is very straightforward. You want to play a Daring Poro, you want to Iceborne Legacy that Daring Poro, and then you just want to play as many Daring Poros as it takes to kill your opponent. And most of your deck is built around making sure that that happens, and then something like Poro Snacks is here for the games where you don't necessarily draw Iceborne Legacy, but also because 4/4 Poros for Iceborne plus the Poro Snacks is better than 3/3 Poros of just the Iceborne, because 4/4 Poros count to 20 just a little bit faster than 3/3 Poros do. And now there are a couple of tech options that I'll go over later on that players have included that aren't necessarily in this list, but for starters, let's talk about what is in here. Obviously, you have Daring Poro and Poro Cannon, and that's going to synergize with Stress Testing, which is going to just be one of your main draw engines through Zonite Urchin or Get Excited, but also Station Archivist. One of the cool interactions of Station Archivist plus Stress Testing is that this card has the line of text, when I'm discarded, draw 1 fleeting. So Station Archivist is going to create a fleeting copy of the Stress Testing, and then at the end of your turn, when the cleanup phase happens and you discard all of your fleeting cards, Stress Testing will get discarded, draw you a new fleeting card, but the cleanup phase has already happened, so that fleeting draw is actually going to persist into the next turn, so you do get a little bit of a delayed draw there if you Station Archivist into the Stress Testing. 3 Sisters, just an extremely versatile card. Flash Freeze, Fury, and Entomb are all great options. Fury going to protect you from the removal as well as help push lethal. Flash Freeze going to stop you from dying because you really are not playing defense very well on this deck. You very much want to be the aggressor in almost all scenarios. If your opponent is playing for board, you can actually play the pass game pretty well, because if your opponent wants to take it to just, hey, let's pass until we're on 13 mana, and then you throw down a Daring Poro and 2 Iceborne Legacies, you know, wait for them to do their response next turn, 13 mana, just play out all your things, summon as many Poros as possible. That's a pretty reasonable game plan in a way that you will be able to combat the slower decks of the format, which is what this deck is sort of known for doing, is really beating up on the control decks and anything that wants to take a while to play the game. Zonite Urchin, pretty straightforward, draw a card. Boom Baboon is a little bit of a late stage tech. A lot of the earlier iterations of this deck were playing Avarosan Sentry in that 2-drop option, and eventually just deciding that it was a little bit too slow for what the deck wanted to be doing. The delayed draw wasn't really great having this non-elusive unit. What Boom Baboon is going to do is not only play aggressively for a 2-drop having 3 attack, but getting that Flame Chompers down, if you're discarding it for Zonite Urchin or Get Excited or what have you, is going to pull elusive blockers out of the way, because there are a couple of other elusive decks in the format. You don't want your opponent's dancing droplets just chump blocking out your Daring Poros until you lose the game. Boom Baboon is going to help with that a little bit, and because some of the other elusives in the game are, you know, 1 attack, be it Dancing Droplet or even Bandle Commando or something like that, you can actually get off multiple attacks with the Flame Chompers. Iterative improvement, pretty straightforward. You're going to be copying your Daring Poros. Don't be afraid to use this on something like a Zonite or a Station Archivist if you're game plan isn't going as intended, you don't have your Daring Poros, you haven't gotten an Iceborne Legacy yet, you just need more draw power, you can absolutely use the Iterative for a little bit more draw power. It doesn't have to be used on Daring Poros exclusively. Mystic Shot and Get Excited both in here, pretty straightforward for burn. Poro Herder, Daring Poro is the only Poro in your deck, so you do have to find one before you can actually use the Poro Herder, but it is going to guarantee draw that Daring Poro every single time. Time Trick, obviously a great way to draw cards, but also has a relatively neat interaction with Station Archivist. So Station Archivist is a really cool card for this deck because you have a lot of high priority targets. If your opponent is trying to play the long game with you, you can probably get down Iceborne Legacy in the same turn as Station Archivist, but if you're playing in a little bit more of a pinch, you know, Poro Cannon is sort of your go-to. Stress Testing has that cool little interaction like I mentioned, but Station Archivist really gets to dictate the way that you get to play the game in a way that no other card does, because when you reveal your top 5 and you look at all the spells that are amongst them, Station Archivist, as it currently stands, does not shuffle your deck, which means the cards that you see in your top 5 are going to be in your top 5. If you see, you know, a Get Excited in there and your opponent is at 5 life, you can take that Get Excited and throw it at the Nexus, knowing that Get Excited is coming within the next 5 cards, knowing that you will have that burn option available. Or if you don't see any burn, when that's what you're really digging for, you know that it's not an option that is available to you, it's not coming anytime soon, you need to switch game plans. And Time Trick will shuffle your deck. So if you really just don't like what 5 cards were revealed to you off the Station Archivist, you can take Time Trick just to shuffle your deck and get all of those out of the way. Now, you might be wondering, if you're a newer player especially, why aren't there any champions in this deck? You know, as far as you're aware, champions are the most powerful cards in the game. They're really scaled up to be better than followers. Just why aren't we running any? Teemo is another 1/1 elusive. Yeah, maybe it doesn't benefit from Poro Snacks. Maybe we don't want to Iceborne Legacy it, but it is still an elusive. Why aren't we running something like that? And the answer is really just, like I had mentioned, you know, there's no additional copies of Teemo. Sure, the shrooms are great in the long game, but you're really winning the long game anyway. It's something that is unnecessary. We're really only looking for like aggressive options here, right? Which does limit the kind of champions that we would want to be putting in this deck. Maybe we go for Ezreal, but we're really not trying to throw our Mystic Shots and Get Excited at units. We're trying to throw them at the Nexus, so Ezreal is unlikely to level. Jinx is a defensible option, I feel, probably the most defensible, because it is a deck that looks like it can run out of cards, right? Maybe you can hold on to cards a little bit better. It kind of comes down to how much you and your opponent are actually playing the pass game, and I think that if you are playing Jinx, it dictates the way that you are allowed to play the pass game. You want to be emptying your hand more proactively to be able to take advantage of the Jinx and get the rockets off, but because you are playing expensive cards like Iceborne Legacy that are going to sit in your hand until you find a Poro, you do have this sort of anti-synergy if you put Jinx in the deck and you find yourself with her in your hand alongside an Iceborne Legacy, but you haven't had any Poros to put it on yet, and you might get baited into pillaring on a game plan like the Jinx that just isn't going to work out. And as we get down from there, you know, the champions just get more and more expensive. Even something like Victor, you're playing an amount of created cards more so than some other decks, because you do have not only Poro Cannon, but the Three Sisters, as well as the Station Archivist, and even Iterative Improvement. But at the end of the day, you should, like, these are 1-mana Poros that you're throwing down. The cost reduction on the Victor really doesn't seem worth it. You don't need 0-mana Daring Poros to try and win the game. You're going to be completely fine playing them for 1 mana. So it's really just a matter of none of the champions feeling like a natural fit into the deck, and you don't want to just be jamming them in for the sake of doing it. You really want every card in your deck to have a specific purpose, and I think that the way that the shell has really fleshed out for this Iceborne Poro deck is just really one that does not need any champions. Now, some of the cards that we've seen that aren't in here, especially on the top end, are Progress Day and Battle Fury. So Progress Day, obviously pretty straightforward. You know, you do have a possibility to just run out of cards in hand, which is why we have seen players experiment with Jinx in the past. And Progress Day, it's arguable whether or not this is the best option for fixing that. Maybe you just need to put Rummage in the deck. Maybe you just need to learn how to manage your hand a little bit better. But Progress Day is a crutch that you can lean on if you are struggling with maintaining cards in hand. And then Battle Fury, this is actually a tech going back to sort of the original Iceborne Legacy deck, back when this was a slow speed card. Mago GX is the one that I know of that was really playing this with Spiderlings, which eventually would inspire the progression towards Endure Spiders. Now, Endure Spiders comes out. Who's going to innovate Indoor Spiders? That's right, it's What Am I? And how are they innovating it? With Battle Fury, because if you're they who endure gets hushed or frostbitten, Battle Fury is how you're going to fight through that, and Iceborne Poros has taken a page out of that book. Everything comes full circle. It's not uncommon to see 1 to 2 copies of Battle Fury in the Iceborne Poro deck, not only because it is a great way to facilitate an aggro plan without the Iceborne Legacy, because again, you are not going to see this in all of your games, and just really play it around Frostbite and Hushes, especially sort of the original way that it was played in the Indoor deck. Is just, oh man, you know, I've got these 7/7 Poros, but my opponent is Frostbiting at every turn. What do? You throw down a Battle Fury on it. It's not in every list. It's not in the lists that have been winning the tournaments more recently, but it is definitely an option, and it's one of the few tech options. The deck is pretty tight. You don't have a lot of great options left. Augmented Experimenter is something we found ourselves with in early builds, has really been cut out. I think Progress Day is a better option than that one per se, but ultimately it's a very cheap deck. You can mix and match in any way that you want. I don't want to be, you know, recommending, oh yeah, you know, this is the cheap option, you don't have to play any epics, now throw this epic into your deck or throw this other epic into your deck for draw power. But if at the end of the day, if you do have to end up putting 1 or 2 epics into the deck, it's really not going to be the end of the world. But I have been very impressed at this deck's ability to stick around in the meta, despite players really feeling like, you know, really turning on it after that first 24-hour period. But you know, it is a very great option for beginners and competitive players alike, because at the end of the day, it is difficult to deal with an army of 1 mana 3/3 elusives. And, you know, God forbid you get more Iceborne Legacies or more Poro Snacks and they're bigger elusives. It's just a strategy that is as old as Runeterra itself. Play the elusives, hit your opponent in the Nexus, ignore everything that they're doing. And of course, you're going to have weaknesses to aggro, because like I had mentioned, you don't really play defense very well. Something like Boom Baboon can help a little bit in that regard, but it's not going to completely carry a defensive game plan. Things like Spiders and Pirates and burn-based strategies especially are just going to try and farm you, because even if you do open with Iceborne Legacy and Daring Poro, that is a turn 3 play. It means you're not getting more Poros down until turn 4, and if you haven't done anything up until that point, a deck like Spiders or Pirates can have you down to close to 10 HP by that point, depending on their opener. But you do very well, extremely well, into any deck that is looking to take it slow, because you can take it slow as well. You are going to win the long game if you can just stockpile these legacies and just throw everything down in one turn. Just try to manage your mana against your opponent, and it's going to work out for you great. But for a straightforward deck, there is still a lot of really cool lines that you can take, Station Archivist being one of the more skill-expressive cards in the deck, and just something that's really fun to play with. But for a straightforward deck, you know, there is still a fair amount of versatility within it, the way that you play your Boom Baboons. How do you play the games where you don't have the Daring Poros or the Iceborne Legacy? Can you still win in those? And of course, Station Archivist just being one of the more complex cards, one that's going to give you a lot of skill expression. But I highly recommend checking this deck out, especially like I had mentioned, if you are on a new account, maybe you're making a Smurf, maybe you're trying to get a friend into the game. This is definitely a great starter deck, and one that I expect to perform well in tournaments from here on out. Players still kind of figuring out how they feel about it, but it is putting up the results. Anyway, that is going to do it for me today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know down below. I'm a little curious. When we talk about tournament lineups in Iceborne Legacy, it's something that a lot of people like to try to do is put all of their decks on the same strategy. So with Iceborne Spiders and Iceborne Poros existing already, I want to know, what do you think is the 3rd best Iceborne Legacy target? Let me know down below, and we'll see you next time on another Deck Tech. Thanks for watching.